The pain hit me so hard I dropped the tray. Coffee splashed across the counter. Silverware clattered to the floor, and I had to grip the edge of the bakery display just to keep myself from collapsing. For a second, everything around me, the hum of the espresso machine, the cheerful conversation of customers, the scent of cinnamon and yeast, blurred into a wall of noise. But the pain, it was sharp, searing, like someone had reached inside and twisted my insides into a knot. "Hey, Nadine, are you okay?" My manager called out from the back. I forced a smile, wiping sweat from my upper lip. "Just a cramp," I lied. "Didn't eat much this morning." It wasn't the first time I'd said that. And it wasn't just a cramp. For weeks, the ache in my stomach had been growing worse, starting as a dull throb after meals, then turning into sharp stabs that left me breathless. But I kept going. I couldn't afford not to. At 27, working part-time at Sweet Haven Bakery didn't come with insurance, and between rent, groceries, and helping out with utilities at home, doctor visits were a luxury I couldn't justify. I tried everything: over-the-counter meds, heating pads, peppermint tea like my grandma used to make, but nothing touched the pain. So I worked through it, smiled through it, hid it, until I couldn't anymore. That night, after closing, I took a bus straight to the urgent care clinic near the shopping plaza. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead while I sat clutching my stomach and filling out forms with shaking hands. The doctor who saw me was kind, but her eyes told me more than her voice did. She pressed gently on my side, asked a few questions, then said, "I'm referring you to a specialist. I don't want to guess here. This could be something that needs surgical attention." Surgical. The word made my blood run cold. Surgery meant time off work, bills, recovery, money I didn't have and couldn't even imagine finding. Still, I went to the specialist. He reviewed the scans and confirmed it, likely intestinal obstruction, possibly something worse. "If we don't act soon," he said, tapping the folder with a heavy finger, "this won't just be painful. It'll be dangerous." I sat in his office, nodding like I understood, even though all I could hear was the word dangerous. I walked home in silence, the folder with estimates and procedure codes pressed tight to my chest, like it could somehow protect me from the dread sinking in. That evening, I waited until after dinner to talk to my parents. The timing had to be right. The dishwasher was humming, the television murmuring something forgettable in the background. Mom was picking kernels out of her teeth with a fingernail, and Dad was finishing the last of his iced tea. I took a deep breath, then stepped into the living room. "Can I talk to you both for a second?" I asked. They looked at me like I had just interrupted a presidential address. Dad muted the TV with a heavy sigh. Mom didn't bother to hide her eye roll. "Is it about the car again?" "Because we already said no." "It's not the car," I said quickly. "It's about me." I held up the folder. My fingers trembled. "I went to the doctor. Twice. They think I need surgery." Silence. Not shock. Not panic. Just that hollow silence that fills a room when no one really cares what's being said. "Is it that same stomach thing?" Mom asked, not even looking up. "You've always been sensitive, Nadine. Just eat less fried stuff." "No," I said, my voice cracking. "They ran tests. It's not going away, and it could get worse. I might need to go in soon." Dad exhaled loudly, like I'd asked him to co-sign a mortgage. "Sweetheart, we're in a tough spot right now. Inflation's killing us, and we're still paying off that roof repair from last year. This isn't the best time for surprises." "I'm not asking for everything," I whispered. "Just a little help. I can put something down. I just can't cover it all." Mom crossed her arms. "Have you looked into medical loans? Or crowdfunding? Those sites where people raise money for pets and stuff? That's what folks your age do now, right?" The way she said "folks your age" made it clear. I was no longer their responsibility, just an adult nuisance living under their roof. I nodded slowly, throat tight. "Okay, I understand." But I didn't. Not really. I didn't understand how the people who brought me into this world could look at me in pain and see an inconvenience. I didn't understand how love could be so conditional, so performative, like a dance they only did for Chelsea. I walked back to my room without another word. No one followed. The TV volume rose behind me like punctuation on my invisibility. I sat on the edge of my bed, folder still clutched in my hands, and stared at the floor. The floor I used to mop every Saturday. The same floor I spilled grape juice on when I was 9 and got grounded for a week. The same kitchen tiles Chelsea once cracked with her heels, but got forgiven because she was just expressing herself. I was never expressive. I was careful, responsible, quiet, and now I was hurting. And still no one saw me. A week passed. The pain in my stomach dulled but never left. I started moving slower at work, folding myself around it like a secret. My manager offered to cut my hours, said I looked pale, exhausted, but I begged her not to. I needed every dollar, every shift, every tip. I skipped breakfast to stretch my grocery money, took painkillers I couldn't pronounce, and drank herbal teas my coworker swore by. Nothing helped for long, but I stayed quiet. I didn't bring it up again. What was the point? They had made it perfectly clear. I wasn't worth the cost. That Saturday morning, I was upstairs folding laundry, staring blankly at the same faded graphic tee I'd owned since college, when I heard it laughter. Loud, joyful, unmistakably celebratory. I peeked out my bedroom window and saw a rideshare car pulling up. Chelsea stepped out, flawless as ever. Her honey blonde curls bounced around her shoulders, her nails perfectly manicured. She looked like a sponsored Instagram post come to life. "Chelsea's home!" "Dad!" shouted from the driveway like she was the returning hero from war. I watched him wave her over like a game show host, beaming from ear to ear. Mom appeared from the garage, and that's when I saw it. A silver key, a ribbon, a car. A brand new, showroom white Mercedes sat in our driveway, sparkling under the morning sun like some god had lowered it from heaven just for her. Chelsea blinked, stunned, then squealed so loud I flinched. She dropped her bags and ran into Mom's arms, shrieking, "No way! You got me a freaking Mercedes! Oh my God!" "You deserve it," Mom cooed, brushing hair from Chelsea's face. "Straight A's, Dean's List, internships, you've worked so hard." "Only the best for our girl," Dad added, patting the hood like it was his own child. They were laughing, hugging, taking selfies. Chelsea did a little spin next to the car, showing off her new toy like she'd just won a pageant. Dad climbed into the passenger seat to show off the touchscreen, the leather trim, the panoramic sunroof. I just stood there behind my blinds, socks still in my hands, frozen. They told me money was tight, that we were still paying off the roof, that inflation had hit everyone. But now they were dancing in the driveway, giving my sister a car that could have paid for my surgery twice over. It wasn't the car that hurt. It was the message. Too expensive for me, but not for her. I didn't move for a long time. Just watched them celebrate. Watched Chelsea take selfies in front of her new Mercedes. Watched Mom and Dad look at her like she was the sun itself. No one glanced up at the second-story window. No one thought to calm me down. That night, I stayed in my room. I skipped dinner. Not because I wasn't hungry, but because I couldn't sit across the table from them. Not after that. I scrolled through Chelsea's Instagram instead. Saw the picture she posted. Her leaning against the hood of the car. One foot popped, sunglasses tilted, smile radiant. Caption, manifestation works. Dream big, babes. The comments flooded in. So proud of you. You deserve everything. Goddess energy. She hadn't mentioned it was a gift. Hadn't said our parents paid. Why would she? Let the world think she earned it. Let them worship the polished version of her life. Meanwhile, I lay in bed, clutching my heating pad to my side, wondering if the pain in my abdomen was slowly turning into something fatal. And even then, I felt guilty for being bitter, guilty for even comparing. But how could I not? I worked every day, through pain, through exhaustion, through invisibility. I showed up. I helped. I didn't ask for much. And when I finally did, when I asked for the first time in years, they gave me silence. They gave Chelsea a Mercedes. The house buzzed with joy all weekend. I barely left my room. Whenever I stepped out for a glass of water or a piece of toast, I could hear them in the living room, laughing, asking Chelsea about her classes, her professors, her apartment. No one knocked on my door. No one asked how I was feeling, not even once. On Sunday night, I stood in the kitchen after everyone had gone to bed, reheating leftover mac and cheese, and stared at the fridge door. It was covered in magnets and photos. Chelsea's graduation, Chelsea's sorority banquet, Chelsea's internship award. Nothing of me, not even my high school diploma photo. Somewhere along the way, I had disappeared from my own family story. And the worst part, no one even noticed. It was Thursday afternoon. I had just gotten off a double shift, dragging my body through the front door like it weighed twice as much. The pain had returned, sharper, more constant. Every movement felt like it rattled something loose inside me. I headed for the kitchen, hoping water or a bit of ginger tea might settle the fire brewing in my side. Then I heard it. Knock, knock, knock. I froze. We weren't expecting anyone. Mom and Dad were out for their weekly grocery run, and Chelsea had already left for campus the day before, promising to drive her baby with care, like the Mercedes was some living creature. I shuffled to the door, unsure if I should even open it when I heard the voice. Hello? Anybody home? My breath caught. Grandpa. I hadn't seen him in weeks, maybe longer. He wasn't the drop-in type. He was the holiday and birthday kind of grandparent, old-fashioned, proper, always calling ahead. I opened the door, and there he was, Harold Givens, standing tall despite the cane, his brown coat buttoned neatly, sharp eyes scanning me in a second. Hi, Grandpa, I said, stepping aside to let him in. Mom and Dad aren't here. I didn't come to see them, he said plainly. I blinked. He stepped in, leaning his cane gently against the wall. Then he looked at me again, really looked. You look pale, he said, voice calm but cutting. You sick? I shook my head too quickly. Just tired. Work's been crazy. He didn't move. Just stood there, studying me. You're sweating. I just got home. It's hot out. He didn't buy it. He never did. Then, without asking, he pulled out a kitchen chair and sat down slowly. Sit, he said, tapping the chair across from him. I hesitated, then obeyed. The pressure in my gut was still there, but now my chest felt heavy too. I avoided his eyes, busying myself with rearranging a napkin that didn't need rearranging. What's going on? He asked. His tone wasn't soft. It wasn't mean either. It was steel-wrapped in velvet, firm but full of care. I opened my mouth, then closed it, shook my head. It's fine, Grandpa. Really, I'm just dealing with some things. Has the doctor seen you? Silence. Nadine. I swallowed. They think I might need surgery. His eyebrows raised slightly. He leaned forward. What kind? Stomach. Maybe intestines. They're not sure, but it's expensive and I've been trying to manage with meds for now. His hands folded together slowly. Did you ask your parents? I nodded. They said they're tight on money. Suggested I look into a fundraiser or something. I expected some reaction. Disappointment, confusion, maybe sympathy. Instead, stillness. A deep, terrifying stillness. He sat motionless, staring at the table like it had personally offended him. The air in the kitchen dropped 10 degrees. Then he spoke. I saw Chelsea's new car on Facebook. His voice was cold, clinical. Brand new Mercedes. White chrome trim. Looked expensive. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. Grandpa stood up, slowly, deliberately. Then he did something I hadn't felt in years. He walked over and hugged me. It wasn't a casual pat or a side hug. It was a full, firm embrace. His hand pressed gently to the back of my head, and I felt my throat catch. That was all it took. I nearly crumbled into him. He pulled back, looked me in the eyes, and said just 6 words. "I'll take care of it." Then he picked up his cane, nodded once, and walked out the door. He didn't ask for details. He didn't wait for thanks. He didn't need a reason. He had seen me, really seen me, and in that moment, I wasn't invisible anymore. Sunday dinners were a tradition in our family. Rain or shine, holiday or not, we gathered at Grandpa's house. Always around 5 p.m., always at the same table, always with the same menu. Roast chicken, mashed potatoes, green beans, and his famous blueberry pie. But this Sunday felt different. Grandpa had called earlier in the week. Not Mom, not Dad, but me. "I'd like you to come to dinner, Nadine," he said, his voice clipped and direct. "All of you. There's something I need to say." His tone left no room for excuses. When we arrived, the house looked the same as always, quiet, neat, with the smell of herbs and roast wafting from the kitchen. The table was already set, napkins folded, silverware lined up with military precision. But the air carried tension, a current of something unspoken. Chelsea walked in first, her heels clicking against the hardwood like punctuation marks. She didn't even take off her sunglasses before announcing, "You guys, I got at least 20 compliments on my car this week. It's insane. I swear I'm like low-key famous on campus now." She laughed, tossing her curls over one shoulder. Dad chuckled. "You deserve it, sweetheart. You've worked so hard. That car is a reward for all your dedication." Mom nodded eagerly. "You've made us proud, Chelsea. You always do." I didn't say anything. I just pulled out my chair slowly, keeping my eyes on my plate. It wasn't jealousy. It was a kind of ache. The kind you feel when you realize your family is proud of someone else's reflection but has never even glanced at yours. We ate mostly in silence, aside from Chelsea recounting her classes, her professors, and how everyone in her sorority was obsessed with her car. I picked at my food, the pain in my stomach still simmering beneath the surface. Then, without warning, Grandpa stood up. The clinking of forks on plates stopped. Even Chelsea quieted. Grandpa's eyes swept across the table, pausing just long enough on each of us to make us shift in our seats. "I've been thinking a lot about family," he began, voice low but firm. "About what it means to show up for the people who need us most. And I've come to a decision that's been a long time coming." He paused, let the silence thicken. "I've rewritten my will." My heart thudded once hard. Chelsea looked up from her phone. Mom's mouth opened slightly. Dad set down his fork. "All of my assets, my house, my savings, every dollar I've set aside will go to the person in this family who was left behind when she needed support the most. The one who has carried herself with dignity, even in silence. The one who has suffered while others were celebrated." He looked at me. Only me. My breath caught. He continued, unwavering. "Nadine." The room went dead silent. Mom blinked. Dad looked like he had just swallowed glass. Chelsea's mouth opened, but nothing came out. Grandpa pulled a small stack of papers from the pocket of his blazer and laid them on the table, like evidence in a courtroom. "These are her medical records," he said, tapping the top sheet. "Scans, recommendations, cost estimates. You know, the ones she brought home last week, hoping for support." He then laid down a second sheet. "And this," he said more sharply now, "is the invoice for the Mercedes." He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. "I find it remarkable," he said quietly, "that there was money for luxury, but not for life." Chelsea's face went red. I didn't ask for the car," she stammered. "It was a surprise." Grandpa nodded. "That's true. You didn't ask. But you didn't ask if your sister was okay either." The room cracked open. Emotion flooded it. I looked down, unable to meet anyone's eyes. He turned back to Mom and Dad. "You didn't ask either. You didn't think about what she might be going through. You saw one daughter's grades and smiles and social life, And you forgot the other one was breaking apart quietly in your own house. Mom's lips trembled. Dad rubbed his forehead like he could wipe the shame off. Grandpa shook his head. Life isn't about favorites. It's not about who shines brighter. It's about who needs you and when. And when Nadine needed you, you vanished. Chelsea dropped her gaze to her lap. The air was so thick I could barely breathe. Then, softer this time, Grandpa said, "That ends now. She's no longer invisible. Not here. Not to me." I couldn't speak. I didn't trust my voice. I looked up at him and saw something I hadn't seen in anyone's eyes in a long time: respect. Not pity. Not obligation. Just pure, unshakable belief that I was worth seeing. The next morning, Grandpa was waiting outside in his car when I stepped onto the porch. He didn't say much, just a small nod, a gentle pat on the shoulder, and a firm "let's go." I didn't ask where. I didn't need to. 3 hours later, we pulled into the driveway of a private hospital in Charlotte. It looked like something out of a magazine. White stone walls, manicured trees, and tall glass windows that sparkled in the morning light. Too clean, too calm, too perfect for someone like me. My hands clenched in my lap. I couldn't breathe. The only hospitals I'd ever been in were crowded, fluorescent-tinted waiting rooms where nurses barely made eye contact, and everything smelled like bleach and regret. This place was different. I turned to Grandpa, my throat tight. "I don't think I can afford even walking in here." He didn't look at me, just turned off the ignition and said, "You're not paying for anything." And that was that. No argument, no pride, just love wrapped in certainty. He walked me inside, filled out every form, signed every document, answered every question the receptionist asked like he'd done it 1,000 times before. It was like watching a general go to war, with my pain as the enemy. I was admitted that same day. The specialists ran new scans, confirmed the diagnosis, and scheduled surgery for the next morning. The doctor explained the risks and the timeline. I nodded numbly, only half hearing him. I'd been so used to dealing with things alone. The idea of someone else taking the lead felt surreal. That night, Grandpa sat beside my bed in the quiet recovery suite. He brought me ginger ale and pretzels I couldn't eat, told me a story about the time he'd broken his ankle chasing a thief down Main Street when he was still practicing law. He didn't mention my parents, didn't bring up Chelsea, didn't comment on the dinner or the will or the shame in their faces. He just sat there and stayed. When the nurses came to prep me for surgery the next morning, I was shaking. Not from fear of the procedure, though there was plenty of that, but from everything that had built up inside me. Years of silence, of second place, of being the extra, the afterthought, the one no one bragged about. Grandpa held my hand all the way to the operating room door. "You'll be all right," he said softly. "And when you come out, you'll start over. This time with people who see you." Then he smiled, small but certain. "And that starts with me." The surgery was long, complicated, but successful. The first few days of recovery were rough. The pain was deep, stubborn, and constant. But this time I didn't suffer alone. Grandpa came every single day, sat by my bait, held my hand when I winced, read me the paper when I was too tired to talk. There was no pressure, no rush to heal, no guilt for being slow, just presence. That, more than anything, helped me start breathing again. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like a burden. I didn't feel like someone trying to justify their existence. I felt like someone being cared for because they mattered. Not for what I achieved, not for how I looked, but just for being me. Lying in that bed, watching the sun stretch across the white linen sheets, I thought about everything that had led me here. About the night I asked for help and was turned away. About the silver ribbon on Chelsea's car. About the ache in my body that no one noticed until it nearly tore me apart. And then I thought about Grandpa, the man who hadn't owed me anything, who wasn't required to fix the mess they'd made, but chose to anyway. That kind of love. It doesn't shout. It doesn't post online. It doesn't come with bows or Instagram captions. It just shows up and stays. When I was finally strong enough to sit up on my own, Grandpa brought me a notebook. "Start writing," he said. "Not about them. About you." So I did. I wrote about the girl who used to walk home from school alone. The girl who smiled through skipped birthday parties and quiet dinners. The girl who never asked for more because she knew she wouldn't get it. The girl who thought being invisible was normal. And the woman she became when someone finally chose to see her. By the time I was discharged from the hospital, spring had fully settled over the Carolinas. The trees outside Grandpa's house were blooming, dogwoods, tulips, soft pinks and whites, stretching toward a sky so blue it almost didn't feel real. He brought me home to his place, not my parents'. He didn't ask. I didn't resist. It felt right. We settled into a rhythm. Mornings were quiet. Tea on the porch, birdsong in the background, and the rustle of the local paper in Grandpa's hands. Afternoons were slow walks through the garden, my steps still tentative but more confident each day. Evenings were filled with old movies and stories I'd never heard before. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't loud. It was healing. My parents called once. Just once. Mom's voice was tight, falsely cheerful. "Hey, honey, just wanted to check in. Heard everything went okay." I said yes. She paused, waiting. I didn't fill the silence. Then she cleared her throat. "Chelsea feels terrible about everything. She says she didn't know you were that sick. And, well, you know your father. He's not great with emotional stuff." Another pause. Longer this time. "We'd love to have you back for dinner soon." I stared at the phone. For a moment, the old version of me stirred. The girl who would have said yes just to keep peace, just to feel wanted for a few hours. But that girl, she didn't live here anymore. "I'm okay," I said, "but I'm not ready." Mom didn't know what to do with that. She hung up soon after, her voice faltering into a mumbled goodbye. Chelsea texted once, too. "Hey, sorry if I made things worse. I didn't mean to." No punctuation, no wait, just enough to ease her conscience. I didn't respond, because I wasn't angry anymore. I was just done. Done waiting to be seen. Done trying to earn scraps of love. Done shrinking myself to fit into the quiet corners of a family that never had room for me. Instead, I started over. I applied for online classes, nursing. Something I'd always wanted to do, but never pursued because someone else's needs always came first. Grandpa cheered when I got accepted, even brought out an old bottle of cider he'd been saving since the 90s. "Better for this than any holiday," he said, raising a glass. Sometimes we didn't talk at all. We'd sit in silence watching the trees sway. And that silence, it never felt empty. It felt full. Full of everything I didn't have before. Respect, safety, peace. One afternoon, we were sitting on the back porch. The wind was warm, and the world smelled like new leaves and cut grass. Grandpa leaned back in his chair, eyes closed. I looked at him for a long time. The lines in his face, the steady rise and fall of his chest, the quiet strength that had carried me when I couldn't carry myself. "Do you ever regret it?" I asked suddenly. He opened one eye. "Regret what?" "Calling them out. Making that statement. The will. Everything." He was quiet for a beat. Then he said, "I regret not doing it sooner." I smiled. The kind of smile that starts in your chest and spreads outward like warmth. He reached over, patted my hand once. "Don't ever wait to be seen, Nadine. You don't need permission to take up space in your own life." I nodded. I think I finally believed that. Because the truth was, I had been seen, not by the people I'd spent years trying to please, not by the parents who had mistaken love for performance, not by a sister who had never once looked behind her to see who was left in the shadows, but by one person who had watched from the edges, who had waited, and then stepped forward when it mattered most, who didn't know me love but gave it anyway. And sometimes that's all it takes. One person, one act of courage, One choice to say you matter. Now, when I think about family, I don't think about who shares my last name. I think about who shows up, who stays, who sees you not just when you're shining, but when you're breaking. And I remind myself every day, I am not invisible. I never was. They just didn't bother to look. But I do. And so does he. That's more than enough.